All right, welcome back to another episode of the Extreme Lifestyle Living Podcast. Now, by now, you have already realized we have a second host on our program now, which is absolutely sick. I've been waiting for Emma to step into her power for a long time. Not in a bad way. I think the same thing with me and her. We're always holding each other to high standards and our goals, high ambitions, high goals, and just making sure we're always applying pressure to be the best versions of ourselves individually and together. And as you guys know, I'm super, super vulnerable in these episodes. I give you guys my entire life, my soul. I give you as much information as I can. I try to give you guys as much real, raw, vulnerable aspects of myself, my stories, my history, my experience in my life, everything I've been through with whatever topic we're talking about. And I can only do so much from a male pointed view, and it's not that it has to be gender specific by any means, but I can only hit the same tone so many different times. Whereas a lot of you guys that listen to this are female, are women and things like this. Some things just are able to resonate to somebody else a little bit more. And I have a ton to learn from Emma. So do you guys, so does everyone else. So to see her in the full swing of actually uploading her own episodes, her own podcast videos, and things like this, I could not be happier because it's organically, you're going to see us both in episodes talking some mad shit. So I'm super excited. So, to jump in today's episode, I wanted to talk about anxiety. Now, obviously, I've talked about this a ton, but I really want to talk about the areas of your life that you should really talk about or be more aware about rewiring your anxiety patterns to go from being anxious all the time to go to being excited all the time. And the reason why I'm saying excitement and being excited all the time is because whether you know this or not, if you've been here for a bit, I've talked about this before, and if you're one of my clients, I've definitely talked to you about this a lot. But anxiety is the same physiological response as excitement. Our body goes through the same process when we're anxious and when we are excited. It's only as we become adults, as we get into our early teens, late teens, early adulthood, that we begin to focus on wiring these patterns from excitement to purely be animosity, purely be anxious, purely be anxiety. And this could be the same thing for depression, but we're going to keep it just on anxiety for today. But I want to entirely talk about rewiring your anxiety to be more aware of it, to realize that you're probably just super fucking excited for your life. But it's over the last 10, 15, 20 years of your life, you've been kind of pummeled into a box. Life's beat you up. There's these things you've been through. People have said things. You've been through experiences. You've been through traumatic life altered seasons. You go through ebbs and flows as we all do as we grow and try to become better versions of ourselves. And it's not easy, so becoming aware of your patterns of your anxiety is super, super important because you guys deserve to live the best life you guys could fucking imagine. And it's all about perspective shifts all the time. We could talk about the tangible things we need to do to get your life to where we got to go, but that's not relevant for this episode. But we're really talking about rewiring your anxiety, physiological, and your patterns and everything to serve you. Because anxiety is just a natural response to the stimulus from our life and our perspective on it, so it's not going to go anywhere. Same with depression. And it's just the severity of both of these things are just the magnitude of these is what you got to really, really understand for yourself to understand the sensitivity. I'm way more prone to being depressed than I am being anxious. So for me with depression, I got to be way more, diligent, way more agile with how I focus on my depression patterns versus anxiety, which is obviously easier for me to talk about anxiety, which is why I'm doing that first. But there's a lot of clarity for a lot of you guys, especially my clients, and I'm doing this episode not directly for my clients, but a few of you guys I've talked to on my roster, my community. I think this could hit home for you guys a lot because a lot of you guys have had traumatic lives. We all have to a degree, and they alter who we are as people. And I think a lot of us can get a lot of clarity, a lot of certainty, a lot of confidence, a lot of peace, a lot of fulfillment once we realize what patterns are just wired wrong. So we're going to break it down to the patterns that you probably grew up with that got you over here, kind of fucked up with anxiety. And then we're going to talk about some few things that actually how to change your anxiety from being anxious, from being full of animosity and feeling like you're kind of on fire and electrocuted and things like this, electric and almost manic, I guess, if you will, if you want to go to a severe left field of it, when we get into other mental health issues. But we're going to just look back at, how we could change that to rewire them because you're probably just super excited. Prime example, right? We all got anxiety before an interview or before a first date or a first conversation with somebody. How much of that is the animosity from what we think is going to happen, and all of that's negative? If you were to remove the negativities and what if I went to this interview and I absolutely crushed it? What if I went to this first date and it went absolutely amazing? What if this relationship I'm building with a friend on any average, every aspect of your life, what if it goes amazing? What if it was as good as you dreamed it to be? Then all of a sudden your animosity towards, oh my fuck, it's gonna fall apart, turns into, I'm fucking excited. Like, how much better could this get? You know, and I'm really excited to break a couple of these patterns down in your life, because I used to be riddled with anxiety, and I used to be so full of animosity and just so much anxious emotions all of the time, because I was just an emotional wreck. I was all over the place. But it wasn't until I started focusing on my patterns I need to shift, and then I started relaying those patterns with actual things that make me excited. And now, most of you guys know that I've been here. I joke, I'm like, I don't want to say autistic, but it's like, you know, I got problems. And I'm like, fucking love how I'm operating and stuff, because I would not change it for anything, because I care a lot. So enough rambling, enough ranting. Jesus Christ, what am I going on about today? I'm not even going to edit this out, because I'm just going to, like I said, just real rap raw. But enough rambling. Let's jump right into the motherfucking episode. So I'm going to break it down from two different avenues, and that's conditioned patterns that you've grown up with, and then there's patterns that you just need to look out for within yourself. So conditioned patterns that you may not realize you're stuck in. A lot of us are fight or flight. You know, a lot of us have high animosity. A lot of us are high functioning anxiety people, where we go, and it just seems like one of those things. And we're just like, you know, fight or flight response, and we're stuck in that. You know, a lot of us have had childhood traumas where we had to either fight for our fucking lives, and to a degree of, you know, survival, providing for ourselves, being the person for us that we maybe never had, like mom, dad, siblings, authority, whatever it may be. Or we're stuck in the opposite end, which is a flight response, which is a little bit less anxiety, more of like an anxiety riddled, and kind of more pertains to depression, where you're more retracted. But fight or flight, that right there is a pattern that if you are experiencing any similarities or symptoms from that, anxiety. It's an anxiety pattern you got to get situated. Another one is associating growth, any type of discomfort, which is why I say growth, because, you know, in order to grow, you got to get uncomfortable. Going to the gym is uncomfortable. You know, going to a new school, getting a new relationship, becoming a new person is uncomfortable. So if you have any type of perspective that is associated with anything being discomfort, or anything that's discomforting in your life that creates anxiety, that's a pattern that you need to change. You know, like pressure creates diamonds. You know, diamonds are beautiful, quote unquote. You know, we all look at a shiny diamond. We're like, oh, that's amazing. But pressure creates that diamond. Do you think that pressure is, and I know this is kind of a weird analogy to kind of hit it from, but do you think that pressure is comfortable? It's not. You know, for me to get here, sit here on this podcast episode, I had anxiety before getting onto this episode, because it's just that, like I said at the beginning, I care. I want to make sure I'm doing a good job, but I'm not going to let that hinder me, because I rechange those patterns and make sure they serve me. But this is the same thing. You know, when you start to look at, oh my God, these things are uncomfortable. It's hard. Like a lot of you, my clients, are getting your masters. You guys are working full time. You go into the gym. You guys have relationships. You guys are trying to become best versions of yourself. That's not comfortable. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you're not supposed to feel a lot of like momentum into that and feel like it's as if it's just a walk through the park, because it's not. That's why I know so many people around you are failing at changing their lives. For me, like I was at the gym today with Patty, and I actually realized a lot of you guys don't even know who Patty is, but I was at the gym with Patty today, and there's even a guy that was like giving him a bunch of love that talks shit to me all the time. About Patty, about me, about all these different things. He would look at me eye to eye, but it's like, you know, like if I was to literally associate my change and growing my life into where I was at, and just be anxious because it's uncomfortable getting judged by these people. It's uncomfortable being friends with some of these people, and they're talking shit to your face or behind your back, when in face it's all love. You know, all of these different things. If I let my anxiety and animosity around those situations and what other people thought about me, I would never grow to where I'm at. You know, so that's a big pattern that you guys got to understand. It's like, if your anxiety has a pattern of being elevated when you're looking at changes in your life that are discomfort, that causes discomfort and aren't as comfortable, that's normal. But again, that goes back to fight or flight. Are you going to fight for it and go for it, or are you going to flight, or are you going to flight and run away? And I think all these little patterns, once you start to like kind of move the needle by even 0.2%, you start to realize it, right? Because it's not meant to be easy. Going to the gym and losing 20 pounds is not fucking easy. Going to the gym and change your life, gaining muscle mass and liking who you see in the mirror, it's not easy. Setting fucking boundaries is not easy. But all of these changes in your life that causes a bunch of discomfort and causes you to grow in the areas you know you want to, creates pressure, and that pressure is going to give you anxiety. It's normal. But can that anxiety be your downfall? Absolutely. But can it also be wired to be excitement, because it's exhilarating that you're actually showing up and changing your life? Absolutely. A couple other conditioned patterns that a lot of us fall into the entrapment of is perfectionism. Everything gotta be perfect all the fucking time. Like, you know, like especially with macros, especially going to the gym, especially when it comes to changing your life and your boundaries. I talk to my clients all the time, and it's like, this week would have been good, but X. I did this, but X. It's but this, but that, but this. And it's like, there's no such thing as perfection. There's no such thing as any of this stuff. It's like, there's progression over perfection. And I think something about you guys, you really got to understand that perfection is riddled with anxiety because to be honest, make it left field, that'll stem into OCD like tendencies. That'll be you being like, I can't do this because left, right equals this. It's like, no, you got to understand there's like a 90 percentile that you want to go for. And any of my clients that have been with me for a long time, it's your high standards versus your non-negotiables. And you can't be perfect at anything. So once you understand that, you'll realize that when your anxiety comes up, it's because you care, like I said, and you're having high standards, which is fine. But you can change the flow of that energy into excitement because you like know where you could be you could critique yourself to get better versus and which leads me to the other one, which is catastrophic events. You think everything's going to be horrible. You think things are going to be life-changing in a negative way. It'll allow you to control the animosity around these emotions because a lot of you guys go through these rabbit holes and it's like, I'm going to fucking die. This life is trash. Like, what if I make this risk? What if I sat there and believed everybody what they told me about what I was going to do in my life? In terms of like quitting my 9-to-5 job, quitting my corporate job, quitting all of this stuff that 90% of people were saying I was crushing at. Dude, like, aren't you happy enough? Why don't you stay here? Like, what if I chased perfectionism? I would have never ever made that first jump. Do you know what I'm saying? And if I sat there and was stuck on the catastrophic events and like, oh no, what if I don't make money? What if no one likes me? What if all my clients leave me? What if all this happens? What if they're right? I would never have made a jump neither. Do you know what I mean? So these are things that you got to pay attention to because a lot of you guys do that. It's either like, holy shit, it's fucking on fire. We suck. Everything absolutely is trash. Or it's the opposite and it's absolutely amazing. You're on cloud nine. And those two bounces back and forth, you got to understand is a wired pattern from your anxiety, and it's not your fault. You know what I mean? None of this stuff is your fault, and I think that's the biggest thing I want you guys to take out before I get into like patterns for you guys to look out for. But it's like, none of this is your fault, but you got to understand these conditioned patterns are so real in our lives. And before I even talk about the patterns that you need to watch out for to like really really make sure you get to the root of your anxiety is social settings. All of us have anxiety in social settings, whether it's going to family events and you see other people, like, you get anxiety around those aunts and uncles or grandparents you haven't seen in a bit for all these different reasons mentioned above, or even like outings with your friends, you have social anxiety and all these different things. And it's like, you got to be really aware of these things because anxiety can put shackles on your mindset in your life and really ruin the quality of it. And that's why I want you to bring it back to the excitement part of it, because there's literally studies out there, you can search them up. And it's literally your body goes through a physiological response to a stimulus, and it is anxiety. But that same tone is literally in your body is rooted as excitement, which is crazy because once you start looking at all that, and if you've been here for a bit, I talk about realism. Like, realism helps you still rely on the facts. And when you rely on the facts, you can kind of look at your anxiety from a standpoint of, well, I know I'm worrying about this, which again is okay because you care. It's okay to care and okay to be anxious and things like this, but not at your expense of your quality of life. A lot of you guys are like, just like feel the emotions uprise and you're just like, shelter, numb, avoid. That's not the right way. You got to rewire all these patterns. So let's jump into some motherfucking patterns you guys can start paying attention to today. Now, the two that I'm going to mention first are really closely related to me for anxiety, and that's negative thought patterns. Like negative thought patterns, beating yourself up, negative dialogue. And that's why I love journaling. I love affirmations. I love reading perspective shifting or mind bending, kind of like altering self-help books because, I have a very, very, and again, I care a lot. I want a high standard. I want everything to be perfect because that's just how I am. And again, riddled with anxiety, and I'm wired this way. So I got to be aware of this stuff, but I have a horrible negative self-talk, especially if I'm not aware of me chasing perfection. If I'm over there, like, pretending in my life that this has to be 10 out of 10, which is why I get anxiety around the podcast sometime. I got the video doing here. I got to make the audio, all this different things. Like, it's a lot. I create this picture that's bigger than it needs to be because I care. And if I enter the conversation with that energy, it's not going to be great. You know what I mean? And then I start the negative self-talk comes up. Start beating myself up. Like, oh, you stupid idiot. You should have did this, or you should have slowed down over here, or why you was in a rush. We all do it. We all motherfucking do it. And are we perfect where it's never going to be there? No. You're going to talk some shit to yourself every now and then. But again, it's about the pattern that you're understanding to look out for so you can make those adjustments. It's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be each week. It's not going to be over a couple months. It might take a couple years. But the biggest thing is you're going to gain a relationship with yourself with the negative self-talk. Which leads me to my second one, which is repetitive patterns of repetitive thoughts. This is kind of anxiety and kind of depression, but if you're thinking about the same shit all of the time, like, let's say that boyfriend that broke up with you 10 years ago, that girlfriend that cheated on you 5-10 years ago, mom and dad did X, Y, and Z, you had this happen in school, and whatever it may be, like if you're continuously thinking about these traumatic experiences that aren't generally positive, you're going to kick up a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety. And like again, that's a pattern you got to look out for, because if you're rethinking and reliving some of these experiences, the second you relive those experiences, your emotions get heightened, your feelings get heightened, your awareness gets heightened, your anxiety gets heightened. And if you're not wired properly, what do you think is going to happen? Which leads me to my third pattern to look out for, which is like, physical responses. Do you get short of breath? Do you get your chest tight? Does your hunger go away? Do you notice you're more agitated? Do you get snappy? Do you get pissed? The biggest thing with me is I know I'm very quick with it. I'm very quick responded. Like I'm very fast. My brain moves very fast. And I notice like, my physical sensations is I get super angry, super agitated. I notice I use my words in almost a manner that's almost like negative. And again, negative self-talk towards myself. But then I start like ripping other people apart as well, which also physical sensations are that, but then that's also an emotional sensations you gotta be mindful of as well, because anger is an emotional, but also you can feel it in your body and your physicality and stuff. But I think that's something you guys gotta be super aware of, because like how many of you guys notice that like through the course of the week, and a lot of my clients, I always say, when you're working, it's usually on Wednesday, Thursday. Everyone starts to kind of fuck up. You wake up a little bit more tired from the beginning of the week. You're staying strong. You're trying to be committed to all your goals. You're crushing your teeth. You're dotting your eyes. And you're just gripping the steering wheel a little bit too hard. Or you notice someone talking to you and you're kind of like gritting your teeth a little bit. Like, can you just shut the fuck up? Or like, all these little signs show up. But again, it's a pattern that is wired in a negative way, which is why we're talking about it, to make those shifts. I know Wednesday, Thursdays, I'm shot. Like I'm so agitated by Wednesdays and Thursdays that I have to take an extra 2-3 hours just to rest. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the gym. Monday's my busiest days of the week. Tuesday, I'm usually catching up with a lot of other administration work and podcasting and other like little bits of stuff that I got to do. That come Wednesday morning, Thursday, I am shot. And it's on me to realize that pattern of my physical sensations. I'm pissed off. I'm feeling all these different physical, like I'm tense. I notice my emotions. I'm pissed off. I'm more agitated. I'm a little bit more anxious and things like this. And, this is when we got to get into like, when another pattern too to talk about is like numbing and avoidance. A lot of us numb with smoking weed, drinking. A lot of us avoid by just like, pausing and freezing ourselves and things like this, which ends up becoming a numbing in a certain way. But, I think the biggest thing with that is like, all of these patterns are going to like go against you. And you got to really, really be mindful of how they are, because like if you're reliving these patterns, you're allowing your anxiety to run rampant, you're never going to see success, and the reason why I'm going on a rant about it is because none of this is tangible. Like it's not like, okay, if I go to the gym, I hit my workouts and I track my nutrition and I do this is what it is on paper. If I want to change my life, I need to make more money, I need to get a better career, I need to do this for certifications or business or whatever it may be in terms of that area of growth. When we're talking about this, it's entirely subjective to your experiences of life and what you have been through yourself. So it's super, super hard to stay focused on this stuff. But again, each day, each week, each month, as you become more aware of the patterns to look out for and the conditioned patterns you've got as a child, you're going to have so much more success in your life. Because again, so many of you guys are doing so well in your life, and a lot of you guys that work with me, I call it your mental fortitude. You guys are fucking crushing your life on paper. Everything's going super, super well, and like every check-in is like, yo, give yourself more praise, give yourself more grace. Look yourself in the mirror and be like, yo, like I'm fucking doing it. Because many of you guys, to give you a huge perspective shift, to really, really show you where the conditioned patterns of anxiety are in your life, and the patterns are like how evident they are in your day-to-day lifestyle without even you realizing, is take a second to move back a little bit and realize where you are today is probably somewhere you once dreamed of being, but your expectations thought it was going to be a little bit different. And what I mean by that is a lot of you guys right now are in the gym, tracking your macros, hitting your workouts, have clarity and control around your fitness, around your mental health, around your goals and where you're going to take them, around your boundaries of what people should do for you and what people shouldn't do for you. And that's hard to find out as well. And you guys have the answers to all this, yet you're not giving you guys self the time and energy to look for the patterns, to change these, to give yourself more fulfillment. The time and energy is out there, but you're just not as efficient as you are with your own mindset. Then you have conditioned patterns with anxiety and other things that are just like holding you and constricting right now. But if you take a big step back and compare who you are right now listening to this episode or watching it 6 months ago, boundaries, personal space, how much better is that for your own quality of time? Workouts, how much better are your workouts being done and your commitment to yourself? We're not talking about the tangible results and the physicality of it. We're talking about the feelings and your commitment to it. Same with the nutrition. Sure, like we're all going to struggle with nutrition to a degree, but it's like how much more like invested are you to it? And that's where you got to realize all of your expectations aren't as maybe as your expectations are way too high. A lot of us are. But if you have all these patterns going on, the patterns of all this anxiety, you've been conditioned since a childhood with a lot of anxiety and stuff, this is why you're not seeing the success you deserve. It's because you just got to have all these perspective shifts. And to be honest, like when I had these shifts, like I really found out that like, I used to be super timid, super introverted. I still am introverted, but I used to just hold everything in. I used to just never do anything because I was super insecure, full of anxiety, full of animosity and all these different things. But, once I started to realign these patterns, realign these shifts, I started to realize, especially now to this day, like sitting in here, like having this conversation with you guys, I've exceeded my expectations. I just had different expectations as to what I thought they looked like. Retiring myself from work, I thought I was going to be debt free when I did that. I'm not. So, I had perfectionism. I'm a failure. I got fucking full freedom. That's what I wanted. You know what I mean? So I'm way better. These different things like this. Me in the gym, like I'm always beating myself up for the car accident, the injuries and all these different things. I'm in the gym. I'm training 5-6 times a week. I'm actually bodybuilding and competing again. I literally gave that up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And now I'm doing 3 shows next year, pumped. You know what I mean? So sometimes we got to take a step back to look at it from this perspective of where we've grown the last 6 months, where we've grown the last 12 months, last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. If we can compare that, how you operated those days and how you're operating these days, there's 2 things I want you to pay attention to wrap up this episode. Number 1, it's inevitable you have a shit ton of fucking growth that you're going to be like, damn. But then on the other side of that, you're going to be like, damn, there's a shit ton of stuff that is the exact same, which is why talking about the patterns of your anxiety and talking about the patterns of your conditioned patterns of growing up the way you did are so important because, we're so quick to be like, I need A plus B equals C. I want to gain weight, gain muscle mass, lose fat. I'm going to go to the gym and track my macros and boom. I want to make more money, so I'm going to get a better job, better career, do certificate, get my master's and do this. That's great and all, but what's the point of that when you're not looking at it from the right perspective and the right lens that you should be? And I think that's the biggest thing I want you guys to take out of this entire episode is that your perspective on life is 90% of what you're doing. And many of you guys are doing so many fucking things right that is just the perspective shift for you guys to have the clarity of what's fucking in front of you right now. So enough rambling about it. There's a lot of conditioned patterns that we all struggle with anxiety. There's a lot of patterns that we have, from a conditions of like physiological or emotional or avoidance, tons of different things we talked about today. But the biggest thing I want you to realize is that where you are right now is in fact somewhere that you once dreamed of being at. And there's a lot of growth within that conversation if you said that way. So I'm going to end it there. I did ramble a little bit, but it's because I just a lot of passion for this because I remember being shackled to my anxiety. Shackled, like not being able to leave my house, being too scared to go buy myself the clothes that I wanted to, being too scared to speak up wherever. And now I'm having a podcast with a full client roster list and I'm helping change your lives every single fucking day. And I can promise you, if I can sit here and fucking do this, you can do this and fucking more. So if there's anything you guys need, you always know, reach the fuck out. But other than that, keep showing up, keep setting that standard, and I could not be any more proud of you guys. Let's fucking go.